Australia's decision to reduce its acquisition of new infantry fighting vehicles to just 129 Redback platforms has become one of the most debated shifts in the country's modern defence planning. What initially appeared to be a simple budgetary adjustment has grown into a much wider conversation about Australia's strategic identity, the future of its land forces, and how the country intends to position itself in a rapidly evolving Indo-Pacific security environment. At the core of this debate is a fundamental question: is Australia designing a military for the threats it expects, or the threats it hopes never to face? The answer seems to lie somewhere in the uncomfortable space between financial discipline, strategic realism, and the unchanging requirement to protect soldiers on the ground. Originally, the Land 400 program envisioned up to 450 infantry fighting vehicles to replace the aging M113 fleet, vehicles that date back to the Vietnam War and no longer meet survivability standards in an era defined by drones, precision fires, and ambush-resistant armor. A full mechanized transformation was not just a modernization effort but a structural shift aimed at generating a brigade-sized force capable of autonomous maneuver operations, contributing to coalition missions, and remaining interoperable with the United States. Cutting this ambition down to 129 vehicles is more than a numerical reduction, it signals a philosophical shift within the Australian Army and the government overseeing it. Canberra's position is that Australia does not require large continental ground forces and that future conflicts will prioritize long-range strike, undersea warfare, advanced air power, and control of maritime spaces. This logic aligns with the Defence Strategic Review, which places deterrence by denial, integrated force design, and a shift away from traditional heavy land formations at the center of national strategy. In other words, Australia sees its future defence not in massed armour but in precision, reach, and joint integration. At the same time, maintaining hundreds of modern IFVs would consume enormous portions of the defence budget at a moment when submarine programs, Hunter-class frigates, and long-range missile capabilities already demand massive investments. From the government's perspective, 129 Redbacks are enough to sustain a highly trained, rapidly deployable, specialized force rather than a heavy mechanized army. The new structure places these vehicles within limited mechanized companies across the 3rd and 7th Brigades, enabling the formation of high-readiness combined arms battle groups. Rather than spreading capability thinly, the approach concentrates it where it can be fully trained, sustained, and deployed effectively. If executed well, rotational readiness cycles could allow the Australian Army to extract substantial operational value from a relatively small fleet. But the real risk lies in whether the limited number of vehicles can support simultaneous operations or sustain prolonged engagements without creating dangerous capability gaps. Supporters of the decision argue that modern platforms like the Redback dramatically increase the combat power of each individual vehicle. With advanced armor, active protection systems, modern fire control, network sensors, and superior mobility, a single Redback offers far greater survivability and lethality than legacy systems. For these analysts, the key question is not how many vehicles the Army has, but whether those vehicles can survive within the threat environment of modern warfare. In a battle space dominated by loitering munitions, drones, and precision targeting, quality and integration may matter far more than raw numbers. They also emphasize that Australia is unlikely to fight large-scale land wars alone. Instead, it must be prepared for targeted interventions, regional stabilization missions, and joint operations where situational awareness and interoperability outweigh mass. However, critics view the reduction as a strategic overcorrection. A fully mechanized brigade typically requires 250 to 300 IFVs to equip its combat companies, support elements, reconnaissance assets, and command vehicles. With only 129 platforms, Australia cannot field even a single complete mechanized brigade according to modern force generation standards. For many observers, this raises concerns about whether the country is underestimating the demands of future contingencies. The Indo-Pacific is a region where conflicts could unfold across jungles, urban environments, and archipelagic terrain, areas where armored protection can mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic casualties. Recent training incidents and mechanical failures among older vehicles amplify concerns that limiting the modern fleet could leave soldiers relying on outdated equipment at crucial moments. Regional comparisons further fuel this unease. Singapore fields a substantial fleet of Hunter and Bionics IFVs despite having a population far smaller than Australia's. China deploys vast numbers of modern platforms like the ZBD-04A and ZBL-08. Japan, though not a continental land power, still maintains a larger armored capability than what Australia envisions. Even Indonesia continues investing in medium tanks and armored vehicles suited to its geography. Against this backdrop, Australia's elite but compact mechanized fleet positions the country as capable but constrained, optimized for niche roles rather than sustained high-intensity land combat. An additional dimension to the debate is industrial. Proponents of the 129 vehicle plan argue that it enables the establishment of a domestic manufacturing line through Hanwha Defence Australia's facilities in Avalon and Geelong. Once production capacity and supply chains are in place, Australia would retain the ability to scale up quickly if regional tensions intensify. This expandable model allows the government to manage short-term costs while preserving long-term flexibility. Critics counter that maintaining dormant industrial capacity without guaranteed future orders is costly and politically vulnerable. Once a reduced fleet becomes the baseline, expanding it later may face bureaucratic inertia, even if strategic conditions demand it. Whether 129 Redbacks will prove sufficient ultimately depends on how the Indo-Pacific evolves. Australia's strategic attention remains fixed on the Western Pacific, where tensions around Taiwan, the South China Sea, and broader regional competition could escalate unpredictably. Instability in places like the Solomon Islands, Timor-Leste, or Papua New Guinea could also require rapid deployments into complex environments where armored protection is essential. If competition intensifies, Australia may need to reconsider the size of its mechanized force sooner than expected. In that scenario, the industrial groundwork laid today could become the country's most valuable asset. In the end, the decision to procure 129 Redback infantry fighting vehicles reflects a compromise between strategic vision, financial constraints, and shifting operational priorities. It gives Australia a modern core of mechanized capability while freeing resources for maritime and long-range deterrence. Yet it also leaves lingering questions about mass, endurance, and the ability to sustain operations in a contested region. For the Army Australia wants today, 129 vehicles may be enough. For the Army Australia might need tomorrow, they could prove insufficient. The coming years will determine whether this recalibration was a prudent strategic correction, or an underestimation of the enduring role land forces will play in the Indo-Pacific's uncertain future.